I'm the Director of Emergency Services for the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. And thank you for joining us for the Mountain Fire Town Hall meeting, specifically geared towards helping residents learn and understand a little bit more about the impacts to the watershed, or put simply, the hillsides above your homes here in Camarillo and Somas. We have a ton of speakers lined up tonight, and we're really looking forward to sharing information with you. I want to start out by just letting everyone know, full disclosure, as you know, it's windy outside tonight. Many of us here on stage and our teams back in Ventura are, obviously prepared to respond. If we unfortunately do experience some type of incident tonight, we will be ending the town hall early. We certainly hope that does not happen, but we're going to try to get through this. We didn't want to cancel it because we know many of you are anxious to hear this information. So with that, let's get to it. I'd like to start with some opening remarks. Our first speaker tonight is your sheriff, Sheriff Jim Freihoff.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, thank you all for coming. And for those that don't know, this is going to be recorded. So if you look around the room and you see a neighbor that wasn't able to make it, that wants the information, it will be posted on our VC emergency page. It's not being live streamed, but it will be recorded for that information to be shared, so you don't have to take copious notes. Hopefully you can just listen to what's being shared by our experts here on the stage. Having gone through this when I was the chief of police in Ojai after the Thomas fire, the fire did obviously a ton of damage, much like the mountain fire did here. But it was the ongoing gift of the fire in the form of floods and debris flows that really were the things that people weren't really prepared for. And so I'm very thankful for Patrick from our OES team and the rest of them being here to let you know what to prepare for, what to think about, and really what those thresholds are that Jim Latusa will be talking about. Jim was like a blessing for me when I was in Ojai about how much rainfall was going to cause the mud flow that I had to be prepared for, and what homes did I have that were between the mud and where the ditch was that was supposed to catch the mud, because there was homes in between those. And so there some of you that may fall into that same criteria. So as you look at your hillside, if there's nothing that's going to catch that debris flow, you got to figure out what you're going to do with it, how you're going to divert it. And some of those hopefully questions will get answered by the team that Patrick has assembled. But just want to thank you all for being here. Thankful for the team that we have, and your chief, Eric Tennyson, leading the team here at the Camarillo Police Station. So thank you all for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheriff Freihoff. Next, I'd like to invite up your chair of the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Kelly Long.
Happy New Year. Thank you for everyone for being here today. I really appreciate the partnership, County of Ventura and the City of Camarillo, to wrap our arms around all of you and to make sure that we have the services and programs needed to help you. And I wanted to say thank you to all of our staff here and all of the Ventura County and Camarillo staff for helping and making sure that we're doing the best we can do for you. I just want to make sure that everyone knows vcemergency.com. We will have all the information in here in case one of us speaks too fast. But just really appreciate your time and effort. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss, for any of the damage that you've had. And 2025 is going to be a year of recovery. I can definitely feel it. So thank you so much. And as your board chair, we're here to support you. Just thank you. Supervisor Grell, who the majority are in his district, is here and he has a table in the back. And we're all here for you. So thank you very much. Patrick.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. And again, as Supervisor mentioned, Supervisor Jeff Garrell, who's actually standing right there in the middle. Supervisor, would you put your hand up? Supervisor Garrell is here. He's ready and willing to chat with you. So if you live in his area, by all means, please contact him. Also, his Chief of Staff, Ashley Batista, they're out front. They have a table set up. So if you have any questions, any concerns, any unmet needs that you'd like to share with them, Supervisor Garrell is here. Next, I'd like to invite up the City of Camarillo Mayor Kevin Kildee.
Thanks for having me today here. Our continued thoughts on behalf of the city, of all of you that have lost property, our heartfelt condolences are here with you. There's a couple of things that I'd like to say too, that the City of Camarillo is working very closely with the County of Ventura, and the county and the city have really assembled a crackerjack crew here to help you help yourselves any way, shape, or form that you can here. There's a couple of things I'd like to state here as we prepare for the winter season. I think it's also important to stay informed, to safeguard your property, report any hazards, and really attempt to try to stay calm in a crisis here. And the City of Camarillo is working diligently to support you on this, and we're going to be there for you any way that we can here. And I want to thank you for your resilience in this unfortunate, challenging time here, but we will overcome these challenges as long as we stick together, work very closely, and the future will be bright here. So again, thank you for having me. We do have city personnel in the foyer here. If you have any questions that need to be answered, we're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, just before we jump into the actual presentations, there are a couple of other representatives out in the front lobby here to assist you. So we have representatives from the Small Business Administration, the City of Camarillo, as I mentioned earlier, Supervisor Jeff Carell's office, and then my team, the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. Feel free to stop by any of those tables. Any questions, concerns, if they don't have the answer, they'll get you to the right person. So with that, without further ado, let's get into the nuts and bolts of what we're here for tonight. The first person I'd like to invite up is Mr. Jim Otusa. Jim comes to us from his retired location of Tennessee, but Jim was a county employee and more importantly a geologist, a wealth of knowledge to us for many, many years. So we've kept Jim on our staff. Jim is now a Sheriff's Office employee. He's assisting us in assessing the watershed and continuing to monitor things. And he's going to provide a presentation tonight on the impacts to the watershed. So with that, Jim.
Thank you, Patrick. I'll try and keep this as informative as I can without getting too involved in the geology and some of the technical stuff that goes into all this. See if I get this to work. So the mountain fire burned from November 6th to about November 27th. It burned South Mountain as well as Camarillo Hills. Slightly different geology, but much the same geology. And it burned about 20,000 acres or 19,000 acres, how you want to look at it. That's from the work report. You can kind of see the outline of it on the topography on the screen. Just to show you the size of this fire. Most of the potential hazards though are on the south side of the Camarillo Hills, which I will predominantly focus on for this discussion. So the post-fire storm hazards. We have dry gravel road loading. I will go into each one of these separately. Dust and blowing ash, which I'm sure you experienced today. Erosion from rainfall impacts. Debris flows and debris flooding/flooding. So as we look at this, dry gravel loading. There's two terms here. One is dry gravel, and the second term is loading. So what happens in dry gravel is shortly after the fire and subsequently, a lot of the material that heats up actually gets transported down slope. And it's individual grains of sand, some of the fire debris, the burnt vegetation that falls down slope. And it gets deposited at the base of the slope. In the photographs, you can kind of see the scars going down the slope, as well as in the lower photograph, it's piled up at the base. Another photograph, you can, right along the base, you see what's a little darker brown, and then you see a little black line, or a little dark line. The dark line is the burnt ash that has now been deposited from up on the slope down at the bottom. And the light brown is the sediment that's been rolling down. It's dry gravel, and it's dry gravel loading. It occurs after fires, typically on steeper slopes, and it doesn't have anything to do with rainfall yet. But it gets deposited in the channels, and that's the takeaway for you. Then we have dust and blowing ash. Not really a hazard, as much of a nuisance for those of you that have swimming pools. The ash will settle in the bottom of the pool. You'll have to clean your filter. You'll constantly be maintaining it as long as we have wind events, and the ash blowing, it will go into your pools. It'll also build up where you have little dead spots from airflow, and you'll have to sweep that up and clean that up. Erosion from rainfall impacts. The next thing when we add some water or some rain to these slopes, the water that falls from the sky, the rain, hits the slope, detaches the soil particles because there's no vegetative cover that breaks up the velocity of the water, and those soil particles then get transported down the slope. And typically they end up, if you see the red arrow, they get deposited at the base of the slope that already has a deposit from the dry gravel loading. So now we have two things that are now at the base of the slope or in the channel that are sitting there loose and ready to be transported. So the next we get into, we had a little fire to this situation out there. We've had it, but the fire has effects to the soil as well. The hotter the fire burns, the higher the soil burn severity or the fire severity is. And then when you get a high soil severity, you create this layer we call the hydrophobic layer, which is basically the combustion of gases in the vegetation that gets absorbed into the soil and creates this waxy material that repels water. That usually takes 1 to 2 years to break down and not be there. So if you get really strong rainfall in the meantime, it will tend to want to run off greater than it would under a non-burn condition. The good news, if geologists can provide good news, your soil burn severity was low, which means your soil was only slightly impacted by the fire burn. The hydrophobic layers, we didn't observe many. The state in their report saw a few areas of moderate and just very little, less than 0.2% of high burn severity, which means your soils are going to react pretty much like they have before the burn. But we do expect additional runoff due to that rainfall impact and the amount of water intensity of the storms that we receive. I focused in on the Camarillo Hills here because that's mostly why I think we're all here. You will see a lot of it is that lighter blue, which is low burn severity. A few areas of moderate burn and a few areas of high burn. So as you realize this, you can go out on your slopes that have been burnt and it's pretty soft. There's a term called friable with sands that we use, but it's very similar to some of the slopes that have been just brush cleared for fire. That is actually a good thing because we don't create that hydrophobic layer, and the rainfall, if we get small amounts of it, will actually absorb and soak into the ground. That will produce and promote vegetation regrowth. Local geology plays a part with this because if we had, for example, I can bring back the Camarillo Hills, which is an example that's been brought up to me. That was volcanic rock. It does not absorb water very readily. It actually flows off that rock and gives more water to the stream channels that will then be allowed to carry the sediment that's in those channels out into the downslope properties. In your case, in the Camarillo Hills, it's fairly sandy, which means water will be readily absorbed. It will also readily drain. So if we get into certain events with not a lot of intensity of rain, it will soak into your hillsides and then eventually it'll drain out the bottom without creating too much of a havoc with debris flows and or landslides. So the local geology is a benefit for you. Looking at the South Mountain area, the north side, it has different bedrock formations. They're a little older, they're Oligocene age. They range, Sespe's there, Monterey's there. I don't expect you to know all this stuff. It's kind of out in the wilderness, but they're a little harder rock, so they won't absorb as much. And they also don't develop as deep as soil. So the geology is playing a role in how much can actually erode. And on the north side of the South Mountain, not a lot of erosion. South side, similar to the Camarillo Hills, it does have the Pico Formation, which is more of a siltstone, and it will erode, but those slopes are fairly gentle on the south once we get off the peak. They're fairly gentle, and there's not a lot of development to be in hazardous way. Camarillo Hills is a Saugus Formation. It's Pleistocene, it's young. So it's about 2.5 million years to about 11,000 years old. It's not very old in geologic time. It's sandy. It'll absorb water. And then, so it'll help with water absorption from the rain. Now we're going to look at debris flows, which is one of the big hazards. Montecito comes to mind, Camarillo Springs come to mind, a few of these come to mind. So a debris flow, it's simply put, is it's just a massive flowing mixture of water, sediment, and whatever debris it picks up in its road. It could in its way. It could be rock, it could be burnt vegetation. It'll just pick it up. It has a different property than straight water runoff. And that's something to be cognizant of. And they exist. They exist whether we burnt or not. If we have enough rain, we will get debris flows off steep slopes. That's the nature of the debris flow factor, and I don't want you to think we're having debris flows because it burned, because we have debris flows when things don't burn. So, but you need to understand the difference between a debris flow and flooding with debris in it. And I don't want to go into too much. So, as part of the WORD report, which is the Watershed Evaluation and Response Team's report, conducted by the state, the USGS has a model. It's been established for some time. And they looked at the debris flow estimates, and I focused on the mountain fire burn area. The yellow is very low. Now, what does low mean? Low means in this model that there's a higher than 50% chance of a debris flow if you receive an event that's 1 inch an hour and you receive that rain in over 15 minutes. You have better than 50% chance of developing debris flows. You notice there's one area, the east end, about where we are, where there is some higher burn severity, and also we have a little higher debris flow potential. But most of the area of the Camarillo Hills is going to be low. So, what do debris flows like and dislike? They like large areas to collect water that drain into a very steep, narrow channel. The large areas produce a lot of water. The steeper channels produce enough runout and mixing so that this material can become debris flow as opposed to a flood. Debris flows typically have greater than 40% mixtures of sand, rock, and other things. They are full of material, whereas a debris flood is mostly water with debris in it. And it's a fine line and gives geologists a lot of headache on which do we have a debris flood or a debris flow. I'm trying to bring it down to you so that you can understand the mechanics behind them, so when you look at your properties and your slopes, you can kind of look at whether I'm going to have a large area of rainfall to collect in, a steeper channel, straight, that a debris flow will have a higher potential to occur in, and then you can take the appropriate steps to protect your property. This slide probably gives you the best analogies that you can see, and I'll explain it. The top photo is a debris flow that occurred on Matilha back after the Thomas fire. These photographs are not that far apart. You see on the bottom one, you don't get a good lobate or an area that's a thickness of mass like you do in the upper photo. And that's because the debris flow is mostly sediment. So when it hits a changing gradient, it tends to spread out and stop. And when it stops, because it's greater than 40% sediment, it doesn't spread out. It basically just freezes where it is, and that's the debris flow. That's how you tell that deposit. Whereas a debris flood, it waits for the water to lose enough velocity to allow the material to drop out, and you get more of a cone shape or a lighter shaped thing. Debris flows can be 5 times thicker under all the same conditions as a debris flood. So you're looking at a much thicker mass, and that mass is what creates the problems when it comes down and hits people's yards and their improvements, because it's a much thicker mass and it has more density. So, potential hazards. Initial storm, you would expect that this runoff is going to contain debris. If you have runoff, it's going to contain debris. We talked about dry gravel. We talked about the raindrop impact bringing sediment down to these channels. These channels will fill up with water, and the water will flow out and carry the debris that's able to be carried with it. So you will have that. You may have debris flows occurring in some of the channels as enough water is able to mix enough sediment to create a debris flow. As a result of those debris flows, because they're thick and they're sediment full, they tend to clog things. Once they clog, they can pick a different channel, they can go another direction. They're difficult to handle. As opposed to a debris flood, it will tend to go into the inlets and at least dewater it a little bit. Still may clog due to the debris that's in it, but it doesn't overtop and flow away and go down the streets. It could, but the flows are the ones that we worry about more. The inlets to the storm drains we talked about on the roads, whether it's a road that's county maintained or a private road, those inlets may become blocked and clogged, in which case the debris flow will go up and over and across the road, and it may wash out the road below. It'll make the road impassable, so if it's a one-way in, one-way out, you will be stuck in your home if you're in your home. So that's something to be looked at. Flooding could occur typically downslope, and it will block roads, could impact downstream properties. It could also cause, in the Camarillo Hills, it could cause some road failures along some of your roads that have these cuts along the upslope side that are very steep. Those things could pop out and land on the road, and that may block or restrict access. So after the initial intense storm, and I use the word intense because if we get nice rain, not very strong, things will get wet, things will start to regrow, will reduce some of these potential hazards, but you need to be aware that these are all the potential hazards. So subsequent storms, you get the initial storm effects, plus you get some added effects, and that's an increase in the potential for debris flow. Because now I have wetter ground, I have still material out there that needs to be carried out, and I have the ability that these channels that didn't lose all their debris will now start losing their debris as it gets wetter, it doesn't need as much water to move. The steeper slopes may experience slope failures. They become saturated, they get saturated again, and basically the sediment load is too heavy for it to stay on the slope, so they will come down. Worst case would be if you have a large channel and you have a debris flow come down off the slope, clog the channel and create a dam, and then the water builds up behind the dam until the dam breaches, and then you have everything flushing out of the canyon at once. So one of the things to be aware of is where you are with respect to your neighboring channels. The roadways may become impassable as well as things get wetter. The roads have a chance to be clogged. You can have failures above the road, you can have failures below the road. You have numerous other potential hazards that could happen. So that's the potential hazards we're facing from this. And when we get the rain, that's another big point. I'd like to just point out, if you remember the Camarillo Springs area, we didn't have the rain for a year or so. So that sat there in a dry, fire burnt condition for over a year before we had the rain that actually created the hazard. So we need to be diligent, keep an eye on this area for some time. Thank you.
We'll just use that one. Thank you, Mr. Atuso, for your presentation. We'll be holding questions till the end, but there will be an opportunity at the end to ask questions. So if you have something in mind, please hang on to that, and we'll have an opportunity with all of our panelists. All right, up next, I'd like to invite Jamie Labor from the National Weather Service. Jamie is a hydrologist with the team, and he'll be providing a presentation on some hydrology. Before I hand over the mic, I just want to acknowledge the strong partnership that we have with the National Weather Service. That team is around 24/7, 365, assisting all of the public safety agencies, your public works agency, all of the public agencies with good weather information. And these guys are out of sight, out of mind, but they do a fantastic job. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jamie. Thanks for what you do, Jamie.
Thanks, Patrick. So I'm the hydrologist with the National Weather Service. I work out of the Oxnard office, which is just a few miles down the road from here. Like Patrick said, there's about 25 of us that sit in that office, and we 24/7, we're always there doing our job. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we might anticipate this winter season precipitation-wise might look like, And I also want to talk to you about the different products that you might receive from the National Weather Service prior to rainfall events, during rainfall events, so that you're familiar with. So this graphic that I have up here is showing the potential for, so we're looking out at the Pacific equator, in the Pacific Ocean along the equator, and we look at temperatures of that water. Is it above, is it warmer than normal, is it cooler than normal, or is it normal? This year, we have cooler than normal, which means La Nina conditions. So if you've ever heard people talk about La Nina or El Nino, that's what they're doing. We're looking at the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific Ocean, and that gives us an indication of what the winters could be like along the West Coast, and especially here in Southern California. So again, this year we're in cooler than normal situation along the equator, so that's called a La Nina. It's not extremely cooler than normal. It's just slightly cooler, so we call it a weak La Nina. The weak La Nina is going to persist through the winter. So our wettest 3 months of the year are January, February, March, typically. This La Nina will persist through those 3 months, and then into spring, it'll warm up into what we call a neutral phase, so more of a normal temperature out along the Pacific, in the Pacific. So what does that mean for Southern California and for us living here in Camarillo or Ventura County? Typically, La Nina events, so again, cooler than normal sea surface temperatures out along the equator in the Pacific, tend to provide below normal rainfall seasons in Southern California. So what we see is the jet stream gets pushed north during these La Nina events, and we'll see above normal rainfall in the Pacific Northwest, so Washington, Oregon, into Northern California. They'll tend to be wetter than normal. And then as we get into Southern California and the southern tier of the United States, we tend to be dry. So you can see on this graphic here, it shows that the southern part of the United States is dry and warm, with those storms and the wetter portions of the country are going to be up north. So again, this La Nina tilts the odds towards being below normal rainfall for the entire season. Now that doesn't mean that we won't get any storms this winter. We're definitely going to get some rainstorms. But when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the overall rain season. So when we total that rainfall over the entire season, the odds are tilted towards being below normal. Now we have had La Ninas that are wetter than normal, but here we are, January 7th. December was dry. It's been dry right now. We're looking ahead in our forecast for the next week to 2 weeks, and it's still dry. So it's really it's tending towards that La Nina-esque winter, which is a drier than normal winter. Again, we don't want to let our guard down though, because we still will get some storms this winter that we need to pay attention to. This is a seasonal precipitation outlook. So this is, again, I said January, February, March tend to be our wettest 3 months during here in Southern California. So this graphic is showing us what the Climate Prediction Center is predicting for rainfall, that rainfall outlook for that period, January, February, March. And it is like that previous slide where I showed the southern part of the United States being trending towards more drier than normal, and the northern part of the United States being a little bit wetter than normal. So if you look up at Washington, Oregon, Northern California, this is the outlook is for it to be wetter than normal. Then you get down here towards Southern California and the Southwest, and it's tilting the odds. It's trending towards drier than normal. Again, I'm talking about that whole winter season trending towards drier than normal. So this is Jim showed you an outline of the mountain burn area. So this is the perimeter of the mountain burn area, and in that white box, Jim had talked about the USGS model and the work team, which is called, it's a watershed emergency response team that the state of California and the California Geological Survey, they send people down here to evaluate the burn area. Using those models that Jim had talked about, they developed some rainfall thresholds that we at the National Weather Service will use for our watch and our flash flood watch and our flash flood warning products. And I'll get into what a watch and a warning is in the next slide here. But the rainfall values that we're going to be using, that we're going to be looking at for us to make the decision on products that we issue at the National Weather Service, in 15 minutes we're looking at 0.3 of an inch, 30 minutes we're looking at 0.4 of an inch, and in 1 hour, 0.6 of an inch. Now these equate to about a 1 to 2 year storm. So these are your garden variety, just storms that we see every year. But with that burn condition, and Jim was talking about hydrophobic soils, and it's the burn severity was, again, he had mentioned it was low in the mountain burn area, but it does tend to make it more susceptible to the flash flooding and debris flows. So these storms that we get every 1 to 2 years, now that we're in this burn condition, it's more susceptible to moving material and being susceptible to this flash flooding and these debris flows that Jim had talked about. So these are the values that we're going to be using at the Weather Service, National Weather Service, for our flash flood watch and flash flood warning products. These are a couple of different examples of some information that we might put out prior to a storm coming, just kind of gives you a little bit of information about debris flows and flash flooding. So this is just a sample of what you might see on our webpage as we get into the winter, and if we start seeing some storms coming, and how we'll message what might be coming. So here's where I want to talk about the different products that the National Weather Service puts out. We do a flash flood watch for flash flooding and debris flows. So a watch usually comes out like 12 to 36 hours in advance of a storm. So you can see this image of the taco ingredients here. So we're looking at the ingredients of the storm. The storm may have all the ingredients that it's going to take to reach those rainfall thresholds that could trigger flash flooding and debris flows, but the ingredients haven't been put together yet. It's still, we're looking at it in the models. It's still, maybe it's up in Washington, Oregon, or out over the ocean, and we're still watching it on satellite, and it's approaching. But if we see that those rainfall rates, or the models are predicting those rates to be exceeded, that would trigger us to issue a flash flood watch for flash flooding and debris flows. So again, the ingredients are there, but they just haven't come together yet. When we get to the point where the storm is actually coming into the area, and it might be raining on the burn area already, we issue warning products. So a flash flood warning for flash flooding and debris flows can come, we might have an hour lead time on those in advance of the storm. It even could be zero lead time. It could be that the storm is right there, and we're seeing these rainfall rates being reached on the rain gauges in the burn area, and there won't be much lead time. So again, the warning means the ingredients have come together, the storm is here, and again, there might not be a lot of advance notice on that. And then I'm going to talk to you, so that's watch and warning. Now I want to talk to you about how you can access that information from the National Weather Service. One of the ways you get that information is from our webpage, weather.gov/Los Angeles. Another way that you get this information is on your phones. So I think a lot of you carry phones around. Have you ever gotten Amber Alerts on your phones? That's a wireless emergency alert. So when we issue a flash flood warning for your area, if you're in that area where we draw that polygon, by default your phone is set to receive those wireless emergency alerts. If you actually went in and turned it off, that's the only way you wouldn't get it. So if you think you may have turned those off, I would recommend you go back in there and turn it on. But by default, the newer phones, it's on so that you will receive those alerts. So that's a wireless emergency alert. Our warnings and our products go out to the local media. So if you're watching the news, listening to the radio, they'll get our information right away, and they'll get that information out. Another way to get our information is through a NOAA weather radio. So there's this image of this radio. So these things, you can get them out at electronic stores, like $30, $35 usually. And when we issue warnings, we transmit it out over weather radio, which is picked up by these NOAA weather radios. And that's another way to potentially get the information from us. Internet, so like I said, internet, social media, we do a lot of social media posting, so if you follow some social media, you can get some information about that too. And I think that was my last slide, about how we do things at the Weather Service.
All right, thank you, Jamie, for your presentation. Again, we'll have question and answer session at the end, so please hold on to those questions if you have any. Up next, I'd like to invite Bonnie Luke. Bonnie is an emergency manager with the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services, and Bonnie is going to tell you a little bit about what we do behind the scenes to monitor these storms that potentially threaten your home and how you can stay informed.
Thanks, Patrick. Good evening, everyone. So we just heard from Jamie about sort of what Mother Nature has in store for us over the next couple of months. We heard from Jim about what that might mean in terms of the hazards we're going to face in the burn scar area and just downstream. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what we on the county organization end are doing to help prepare and kind of what goes on behind the scenes when we see something coming down the pike from Weather Service, from forecasts, from information on the ground, and how we use that in conjunction with all of our county agency partners and our local partners to make determinations about what we might need to send out for messaging. Many of you are familiar with our department because we send out VC alerts, or you've gone to the vcemergency.com webpage. So our department is nested within the Sheriff's Agency, but we really represent for all county support and collaboration and communication for disasters. And that covers everything from prevention and preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. So one of the things that we do when we see something coming from forecasts is we're looking ahead 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks in advance to see what kinds of products are out there from the Weather Service, from our internal agency partners, and get a bead on what might be happening. And our team specializes in taking that information and then figuring out, all right, who are the stakeholders who might be impacted? Who are the different agency representatives that we might need to bring to the table in order to make decisions that affect our life safety messaging, our upstaffing of resources, and mitigation measures that we might put in place. Specific to the mountain fire, we start that process while the fire is still happening. We sent out teams with specialists in hydrology, geology, public works, roads, Weather Service, and emergency services, law and fire, to check out how that burn scar was looking, what those hazards would be, figure out a collaborative plan for how we would be responding to that as we go into this winter season, and then developing sort of a plan of attack of what we're going to try to do when we see something. And then events like this, where we try to make sure that we can share that out with you. So our pre-storm coordination process sort of goes like this. We're gonna get in information about, like the wind event tonight. That was on the radar about a week and a half ago when it started popping up and it was looking like there might be something happening. We spoke with our Weather Service colleagues. We spoke internally with other agency partners to say, hey, this is something we might need to look at. And as we grew closer to the event, we initiated conference calls to say, this is what we see happening. The experts speak to us about what they're seeing and what they're anticipating. And we figure out what are the responses we might need to take in order to communicate out to the public, responses that might need to happen, make plans in advance if we needed to offer evacuation information and sheltering. And then we also look at our office at what those applicable alerts might need to go out to you and how we're going to best send them to you in the most timely and accurate fashion to give you a chance to respond in the most safe manner possible. And then when we have a really bad day out there, we also look at whether or not we need to activate our county's Emergency Operations Center, and we staff that. tools that we'll use to come to some of these determinations. Jim and Jamie mentioned a couple of them. We start looking at the burn scar, and we work with USGS, Weather Service, and our partners to figure out what are the recommended thresholds that we might look at for this particular area. And for this particular event, we all agreed on using that 0.6 inches an hour is a rainfall threshold that might need for us to trigger whether or not we need to send information to you and potentially look at evacuation warnings, because this is the level of rainfall, that rate of rainfall that we anticipate could start having debris flow impacts, mud and debris clogging your culverts, slopes starting to erode, impacts to nearby roads that might make it dangerous for you to drive on, or make areas impassable that while the slopes are holding, if you're having trouble getting in and out of your home safely or down to where you need to get services, that's going to be a problem. So we want to make sure that people can plan ahead for those things. So we've set up these thresholds to help us kind of figure out, this is where we start talking internally to say, do we need to take steps? And then we also look at, will there be enough time to enact that step, to give you information, to have you still be able to take an action safely? And that dictates what actions we might ask you to do. Now we have another threshold, and it's a little bit heavier rain, right? It's 0.8 inches of rain an hour. At that point, we're definitely expecting that there's going to be some risks of mud flows. There's going to be potential for debris flows happening. We expect that. We expect that we're going to have problems and that roads are going to be becoming impassable. So we've gone from potential to pretty much a guarantee that we're going to be seeing some problems. Again, we're going to be looking at which of our different notifications is going to be most appropriate for the different areas and given the different time frames we may be operating in. Jamie mentioned to you that, when you're forecasting, Mother Nature doesn't always, she doesn't always do what we want her to do. She doesn't work on the same time metric that we work on. So sometimes she gives us a good lead time and we can see exactly what's coming out there and we can predict it with really good accuracy. And other times, she throws us a Lulu and we've got 15 minutes or an hour. And what we can do with that and what we can't do with that safely is something that we take into mind when we're looking at what kinds of alerts we might give out to you. Now, most of you guys are familiar with the different kinds of alerts. Jamie mentioned one that's issued by Weather Service, Amber Alerts. They use the wireless emergency alert system. We will also use VC Alert at the county level. And that alert system works very similar in that it operates and goes to mobile phones or may go to your email as well, but that's an opt-in. And that allows us to target you directly at the location that you've requested information on your phone. Both of these two different forms of notification, they sort of overlap. These are things that we look for in emergency services. Resiliency and redundancy, we call it. So I know sometimes it might seem a little bit strange where you're going, hey, I just got a notice from this one agency and I just got another notice from you. But it's part of how we do things to try to make sure that that emergency message got to as many people as possible in the most timely manner possible, and that you have an opportunity to get more information and make the right decisions for yourself, your family, and your friends. So we will use multiple different means of messaging. VC Alert, those WIAs, potentially, although we try to reserve those for really fast-moving, large things. So we will preferentially be using that VC Alert because it allows us at a very granular scale, down to even just a city block, to notice individuals of a potential impact. We will use high-low sirens, potentially. Driving up and down the street, having law enforcement use that. Don't make fun of me for that. I'm gonna eat that later. But these are all means that we use to try to make sure that we can reach you. We'll even, when it's safe for our people to do so, go and knock door to door. Any one of these are options. They're all in the toolkit, and they are all on the board when we come together for our coordination meetings to discuss what methods we're going to need to do and utilize. And our goal, as ever, is to provide you with timely and accurate life-saving information and give you an opportunity to do and make the decisions that you will know best how to make for your family and yourself. Because preparedness is an individual responsibility, and it all starts kind of at home with each one of us. We each know what it is that it's going to take us to do to get out of the house, what special medications we might need to pack, whether or not we need to grab the kids or the pets, and how long those individual actions are going to take us, and how we need to plan for them. You know yourselves the best, better than I do. I can't sit there and tell any one of you how long it's going to take you to get out the door and be comfortable and safe doing it, but you can. So we want to impress upon you guys that it starts with you knowing what these notification options are, how we send them out, and that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in the effort of trying to make sure that we can do the best job we can to give you those tools to work with. So, evacuation terminology. I would almost ask for a show of hands, but hopefully you guys are all familiar with the various terms that we use most often. We usually use one of three main directives that will come out with, say, a VC alert or a WIA. The first one, kind of usually our lowest grade, is a shelter in place. And that's something where, in the case of a winter storm event that might impact this burn area, we might ask you to shelter in place because we don't have a lot of lead time, as Jamie said. We know the storm's coming, we know it could be impacting your roads, but we know that it might take you too long to get out before that road is covered, in which case it might be better for you to just hunker down and stay safely in place. We might also ask you to shelter in place because we know that there is danger in an area, but that if you stay put, you should be okay. We might issue you an evacuation warning. And an evacuation warning means that there is danger out there, but it is not yet imminent. However, when we issue an evacuation warning, it's a good trigger for individuals that might know that it takes them longer to exit. If you are someone who has additional needs or has family or pets, you know that it might take you an extra half an hour to wrangle that cat into that carrier. You need to start planning ahead and making that move a little bit earlier than if we issue you an evacuation order, because an evacuation order is our key to tell you it's time to get out now, that danger is imminent. And the last thing I want to tell you for our terminology is about temporary evacuation points. Now, we rolled these out a couple of years ago, and it's our way of kind of allowing a good gathering point for people to go get information and figure out what the next move is, while allowing us to figure out what those needs are that you might have. Our human services agency folks often call it our concierge service, because we know it's not a good day when you have to come out and be evacuated. And we want to do everything that we can to try to figure out what additional needs you might have and what our resources are that we can best utilize to make that experience as least unpleasant as it can be. You already heard me talk about how much I believe firmly that preparedness begins at home. What we're worried when I hit home for people is that during this coming storm season and throughout the next year or so, while this burn scar area really goes through the recovery process, being ready, being set, ready to go is key. So I want to encourage you that if you are not already registered for VSC Alert, or if you have questions about what it means to register, please come see one of us in emergency services. We're happy to walk you through what it does and doesn't cover. But this really is one of our key means of being able to alert you to things that are going on, follow up on weather service alerts that may have been issued, and especially let you know where you can go for more information during an event. We want to make sure too that you know that preparing your property, preparing your family, preparing your pets, these are all things that you can do to get ready so that if and when an event takes place, and in the event that we do need to issue an evacuation, you're ready to go and you feel comfortable and confident making the decisions that you're going to make, no matter what they are. We want you to be set. We want you to be monitoring weather reports. There's very few people that aren't tied in on a cell phone or on the 5 o'clock news or with their friends to be like, hey, it's windy out tonight. or what's in the forecast for next month. And you guys know in this area, and particularly after this fire, that it's going to be important to kind of stay abreast of those things. And we're going to do our part on the county's end to try to make sure that we're following up on these things, but you're going to know your comfort level, and you know your property best, and you know the roads that you take in and out of your neighborhood the best. So you're going to know those hot spots of, where does that road always get a little flooded? Is that going to be a problem for me? Does my car have the right clearance for that? Those are things that you're going to know better than we're going to know them. And we want to encourage you to take the steps that you feel appropriate about making sure that you know what's happening and what that threshold of comfort is for you for your decision making. We want to make sure you know that vcemergency.com is the place to go during an event. If we do have something kick off, or if we do issue evacuation notices, we will always be posting information about that event as soon as we can feasibly do so. New information will be updated, and we will be trying to use that as that trusted go-to resource. So while there's lots of things that might fly out there on social media, know that vcemergency.com is where we will be posting that official information. And if you've got a question or a concern, if we're in the middle of an event, we often open our hotline. And we field it with live people in order to make sure that we can respond to the questions that we know that you're going to have and assist you however we can. The last thing I want to say is go. If you get an evacuation warning, if you get an evacuation order, please do support us and support your community. Help follow the instructions. If you can at all, be ready, be packed, have a kit, have a plan. And do it before the event. We've got a couple weeks at least until we're expecting to see rain, so now is the time to sort of sort those things out. And you will feel better about it when the event does happen, because you'll be like, I've got it, it's gonna take us 10 minutes and we're going to Auntie Mamie's house. If you have a question and you're not sure about whether or not you feel ready to evacuate, leave early. Don't wait for us to issue an order. Don't look at the hillside and say, that doesn't look good. Say, you know what, let's take off now. We want you to feel safe, we want you to be safe. So now I want to talk about property. One of the interesting things with this event was that 95% of the property that was impacted by the burn scar is private property. So it's really going to behoove all of us at the community level to help ourselves and each other by taking the steps that we're going to need to do to look at and maintain those things on our property that have to do with what Jim was saying. Loading, keeping culverts clean, gutters and things that might back up. Because you all know how it ends up happening. You end up with that low spot and it starts funneling over the side. Well, if it funnels to your side, it really sucks. If it funnels to your neighbor's side, you don't want to cause them a big puddle. So looking at what we need to do to maintain and to fix things that might be not holding up so well following the fire as we head into this winter wet season is key. Proactive efforts by you will help promote community resilience overall and will help us help you as we move through the next year and a half, 2 years of recovery. We want to make sure that you remain vigilant to changing conditions both on your property and in your surrounding area. And if you see something, say something to somebody. That's the best way we're going to be able to know what's happening and where we have weak spots and things that we might be able to help with or not help with. And with that, I'm going to kick it back to Patrick and let him take back over.
Thanks, Bonnie, for that excellent presentation. I just want to underscore a key point before we go to our next speaker. We do our very best every day to monitor what's going on out there. And when we have an opportunity, we do our very best to get you timely information. But as Bonnie mentioned, often Mother Nature throws us curveballs. Often things move fast. I don't ever want to hear anyone tell me that they didn't get an evacuation notice and they stayed in unsafe conditions. If things are unsafe and you have not heard from us, please leave. Do not wait for us. Again, we do our very best to try to monitor what's going on out there, but things often move quickly. And it scares me to think that, sometimes people wait for us to give instruction or tell you what to do. So I want you to leave tonight with a lot of information, but most importantly, I want you to leave tonight feeling empowered to take action, to plan and prepare for yourself, and be ready and feel like you know when you need to leave, absent instruction from us. With that, again, thanks, Bonnie, for your presentation. I now would like to invite Ventura County Public Works Director Greg Straklaus up for a few words. Greg.
Thank you, Patrick. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, I'm one of 3 Public Works officials here on the stage, and I know we have additional Public Works staff here tonight to answer some questions. But I wanted to share with you a little bit of the perspective from Public Works operations side of things. Our profession as Public Works officials makes us responsible for really assessing situations and being prepared for circumstances. We look at conditions like the weather through 3 lenses. One is our conditions, right? What are the conditions we're dealing with? The next is our capabilities. What are our capabilities to meet these circumstances? And then, of course, our planned response efforts. So starting with our circumstances, Jim has really given us a good overview of the Watershed Emergency Response Team's report, the technical report that was prepared by the ground troops who went out there to look at the lay of the land and assess the results of the mountain fire damage. We understand the topography of our area. We understand that we have a variety of soil conditions that we have to deal with. We understand that the city and county have also been working with a particular consulting company to help us evaluate hydrology in the area. So we're getting all of these technical analysis to better understand the conditions we're facing when the time comes, when the storm comes. Now our capabilities. We have a ready and trained workforce. Our public works crews have been trained in a variety of areas. And by ready, I mean crews have made sure that our infrastructure is ready as well. We have vac trucks. We have serviced pipes, culverts, drains. You may have seen some of the sandbags on some of the inlets already. Beyond the vac trucks, we have dozers. We have backhoes. In our infrastructure, we have approximately 51 storm drains in the burn area. All have been cleaned and vacuumed out. We have several miles of culverts and underground pipes that will collect and convey stormwater, which is very important when the rains come. And we have 3 bridges that we're prepared for. Now our planned response, besides monitoring the weather and the forecast, we have probably one of the country's best flood warning systems. This flood warning system is made up of about 100 weather monitoring stations and 44 stream flow monitoring gauges. What that does is it gives us information on rainfall conditions, rainfall amounts, rainfall intensities, and it also gives us information about the water flow through these streams at any particular moment. With that, we can take additional weather forecasts and model conditions for the future. So with that capability, we have a really good, we're really in a good position to forecast what will happen and to share this information. We also model, we deploy roving teams of personnel prior to and during the storms. So we have crews, public works crews that are out there on the roads evaluating the situation and reporting back to base as to what they're seeing, what they need to have done. We have on-call personnel 24/7, so in the off hours, weekends, evenings, we have personnel on standby ready to be called out to the field and call in additional crews when needed. We can place and we will place equipment in key locations that are typically problematic, so we'll be ready for circumstances at those points. And we're constantly communicating with our other agencies. The agencies that are presented here tonight, as well as other county and city agencies. Our last planned response is to plan for the unexpected. Whether we see it or not, we have to be ready for what's to come. So one thing I'd like to ask for is a little bit of help. There is an app out there. It's the Ventura County Public Works app, and it's a really neat tool where you can download it onto your phone and take a picture of something that you have a question about or some condition out there in the field that you want to communicate to Public Works, and take that picture and then send it through this app, and it'll come to Public Works, and we will respond to that particular message. And even if it's not within our jurisdiction, we will forward it to the jurisdiction, whether it's state or city, or other agency that needs to respond. We will also answer questions through that app too. So please, that is one way that your eyes can help us in the field see things that we wouldn't normally see. Jim coined a pretty good phrase, nice rain. So I think from my Public Works perspective, we'll be praying for nice rain, but preparing for some mean storms. And with that, I know there are other Public Works officials that are turning over, Patrick.
Thank you, Greg. Next, I'd like to invite up Jeff Palmer. Jeff is the director of the Ventura County Public Works Watershed Protection Shop, and he's got some information for you.
So good evening. I want to talk a little bit about some specifics. Okay, ready to start. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some watershed details and some watershed information for you. First, I want to talk about the fire area. After the fire, we brought in some experts in hydrology from Ventura County, and they looked at 100 square miles. They looked at the entire fire area and all the watersheds around them. They looked at each of our debris basins and what the capacity was and where they were. I want to talk a little bit about our flood warning system. It is a real first-class operation. We have 128 rain gauges ourselves, but we're able to integrate our system with both Santa Barbara County and LA County, as well as the National Weather Service. So we get a picture in this flood warning system of any rain that basically comes south of San Luis Obispo. Before a storm comes, we have a number of experts. Oh, it's not coming on here.
I don't know if the team up in the sound booth, it looks like the PowerPoint is frozen. The computer is moving the slides, but it's frozen on the projector. There's something you can do to fix that. You want to sing a song, Jeff?
No, I'm not singing a song. Lonnie did that. I'm not going to try. I will fail miserably. Technical difficulties.
Back up there.
Okay. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about flood warning system. So we can see what is happening on the ground real time for almost everything south of San Luis Obispo. And so we talked to the National Weather Service and a couple of other resources, and they give us advanced predictions of what's going to happen at all these rain gauges. And then from the rain gauges, we're able to calculate what's going to happen in the stream flows. And so this is on one of our websites. It's open to the public. I'll show you a link in a minute. We've added one additional rain gauge up on the ridgeline water tanks, actually in the middle of the fire area here above the City of Camarillo. And then what we did is we looked at sort of the natural conditions before the fire and after the fire, and looked at 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, all the way up to a 100-year storm analysis of how the water would flow for the entire 100 square miles. And then in a worst case scenario, we also planned for what happens if some of the culverts plug. So we wanted to see what should happen and how we should maintain our system, and what would happen in a worst case condition. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of some website resources. There's a whole host of them here. You've heard about vcemergency.com. That's the Sheriff's EOC website, so there's a lot of information about current conditions and current alerts and current activities by the EOC. vcfloodinfo.org has got a homeowner's guide. This is about a 30-page handbook. It's out in the lobby. There's a number of copies there if you like a hard copy. If you want a hard copy and we're out, please give us your email address, or you can go on this vcfloodinfo.org and get it right on your computer. vcwatershed.net is our flood warning system that's available to the public in real time. It'll show you what's happening at every individual rain gauge and what's going on in the stream channels. And then vcpublicworks.org, there's a number of interactive maps. Our GIS system is available to the public, so you can see where there are road closures, where there are hazardous conditions. You can see what roads are public and private and city and county conditions. And then VenturaCountyRecovers.org is a whole host of resources for you. The most important one, I think, is sandbag information. You can get that as well online. I want to talk about debris basins. We have a number of debris basins. These are in the canyons where there is a earthen dam. They're dry most of the time. They're not intended to collect and hold water like a reservoir dam. And in the middle of them, they have a standpipe with some holes in that pipe. And so as the water and the debris flows into the debris basin, the debris drops out and stays in the basin, and the water continues down through the standpipe. So we have a number of these locations where we've gone in after the fire and cleared out all the debris and made sure that there's this maximum capacity for debris in the event of mud flows or debris flows. So this is another one just below Camarillo Heights. You can see it's freshly graded. We went in there and removed a number of yards of material in the standpipe in the middle as well. On all of our debris basin access roads, we've made sure that they're all-weather access, so our trucks and vehicles and equipment can get in the event of an emergency. We've also looked at each one of our channel inlets. This is a typical one. We have a number of them around the fire area. I couldn't take pictures of all of them because they had some graffiti that I'd rather not show in a community meeting. So this is the one I could show you. But we've made sure that there's no debris in these inlets, and we will be monitoring each of these during any storm to make sure that there's no trees or anything blocking any of this inlet in the structure. The last slide here, this is on our GIS. This is just a portion of the map. It's available to the public. The yellow line is the city limit line, and the pink roads are county-maintained roads. And then any other road in this slide, as you zoom in, is actually privately maintained. So this is a resource that you can use as you consider what's going on in your neighborhood. The last thing I'd like to talk about is sort of our storm operations, and Greg touched on it. In watershed protection, we have about 60 employees in our field crews. And in roads and transportation, we have about another 60 employees that respond in the field. During any storm event, we will have storm patrols out 24/7 as long as there is a hazardous condition and it's raining. So if one crew is out for a number of hours, they'll switch it out. But we have the ability to bring in quite a big workforce if we need it. We also have equipment on standby in our yard that we can mobilize to the site. And we have about 40 master agreements with contractors and suppliers of trucks, of steel plates, of traffic control, and all of those resources will be used as necessary to respond to whatever conditions we see out there on the roads. And again, Greg talked about, that you could take a picture. If you see something, send it in. Our crews will be out roving continuously during storm events, but if you see something that you can highlight to us, we'll be happy to take a look and make sure a crew responds immediately to that condition. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff, for that. And next, I'd like to invite Dave Klotzel. Dave's the Public Works Director for the City of Camarillo.
Thank you, Patrick. Good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm with the City of Camarillo, and that's the area that's below the light-colored city boundary line shown here that Jeff just described. And as he also showed pictures of and described, the major basins and drains and streets above the line are maintained by the county, and the city maintains things below the line, but obviously the winds, fires, and stormwater runoff do not care about boundary lines. So the city's been working very closely since the fire up to today and continuing. We'll coordinate closely with county OES, all the emergency services, fire, sheriff, and county public works for storm preparedness and response. Public works officials across the country do very similar things. We at the city do almost nearly identical services, equipment, preparedness, as was mentioned by Greg and Jeff already. And so the city is well prepared and ready to respond immediately as needed with our staff, heavy equipment. We have a supply of sandbags, road barricades, and signs as needed, with a major focus on maintaining the inlets and pipes in working order so we can drain those flows away as designed to prevent flooding. The level of response is going to be dependent on the storm forecast and the info that we receive from OES, which we're continuously monitoring. For the heavier expected rainfall, the city, in normal, even non-fire conditions, dispatches roving crews throughout a storm event to monitor our drainage system and roads to make sure everything is kept clear and functioning properly. The city encourages residents to protect their property from flooding and erosion, as you've already heard, but we really encourage everybody to do that now, ahead of any coming storms, and then contact the city if there are any issues with blocked drains or flooded streets or downed trees that are seen. Again, within the city right-of-way, that contact would come to the city, again, which is the area below the city limit boundary line shown here. As always, if it's a life-threatening emergency, residents should call 911. Otherwise, the city after-hours emergency number for public works response is 805-388-5325, and then press 3, which will directly connect to a live person to dispatch the appropriate response from City of Camarillo Public Works. Extensive weather preparedness info is also available on our website at cityofcamarillo.org/weather. And this contact info is available at the city table in the foyer for you to take a look at and write down or take a photo of. So the city will be here after the meeting for any questions. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Thanks, Dave. Next, I'd like to invite up Chief Barry Parker from the Ventura County Fire Department.
Good evening. First of all, I just want to take a moment and thank each and every one of you that are here. It is so important that you're here because you are developing a plan. So at the fire department, everything that we do is based on a plan. So if we know for sure, expect the unexpected. If we have a plan in place, there's no surprises, right? If it's predictable, it's preventable. It's about that simple. So here we are, and what I want to discuss just for a few minutes is what's the fire department's role in this winter preparedness? And I can tell you that over the last couple of years, unfortunately, we have had a lot of practice with water issues, with mitigating hazards for homes, for people who need to be rescued. So we work in coordination with all the other county agencies. And really, the fire department heavily relies on weather reports. So we are in constant communication with the National Weather Service, Predictive Services, Ventura County Sheriff, Ventura County OAS, our Public Works. We are on multiple conference calls leading up to an event. So what does that mean for the fire department? That means we start to plan and strategize how are we going to upstaff to make sure that the public is safe? And what does that look like? So we might have multiple fronts. We might be dealing with the ocean rescue components. We could be dealing with a heavy storm that's going to affect the northern part of the county in Ojai, but specifically here in Camarillo, how does it apply? So what we're going to do is we spool up our water rescue teams. They're 2 6-member teams. These are professional folks that have schooling and training specifically in water environments. They're training year-round to prepare for scenarios of rescue. In addition to that, we call it flood firefighting, flood fighting. Okay, and what is that? We have our hand crews that are made up of about 20 members per hand crew. So we can staff up anywhere from 3 to 4 hand crews. They'll also come with heavy equipment, bulldozers, backhoes, dump trucks, sandbags. This is heavy equipment that's coming to, I'll call it the rescue. We are here to aid. Now that heavy equipment is there for emergency use, which is for emergency situations. We are going to do whatever it takes to hopefully mitigate the situation long enough to get you out of a really bad situation. Mitigate a situation where perhaps we can do some good with public works and divert, dike, meaning create some sort of a dam diversion to move water in a different direction. What that requires of us is to put our members in harm's way to do that quite a bit. And we are willing to do that. We take that risk. We have members from your county fire department right now at the Palisades fire. One of our people got hurt down there. They got hit by a car. He's going to be okay. But that's the risk that every day these firefighters come to work. They're willing to do that, but they are trained professionals, and we take calculated risk. And so what they ask of the fire department to you is to make sure that you're prepared, and that there's not that risk, so you don't have to calculate what the risk is. And that means evacuating early. That means being prepared. Don't wait to the last minute, because we might not be able to get to you. The roads could be cut off. The helicopters might not be able to get up. It could be too windy. The conditions, Mother Nature is in charge. We're simply here on the earth, and we're very small. We're very small when it comes to natural disasters. So again, the ask is just be prepared. Your county fire stations are always open and will always be open to you with wide open arms. So feel free to reach out to any county employee, county fire department, if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Chief Parker, you got quite an applause at the entrance. Everyone loves a firefighter. Next, I'd like to invite up a friend and colleague, your Chief of Police here in the City of Camarillo, Commander Eric Tennyson.
Thank you, Patrick. You've heard a theme tonight that is one of collaboration and one of communication among all the professionals, all of the experts, the governmental entities. And I think it's important that you all recognize that we are constantly talking, we are constantly sharing information in order to keep you all safe. From a sheriff's office perspective, when we become aware of an event, a weather event that could potentially cause impacts, I just want to share with you some of the steps and processes we go through. First and foremost, we have deputy sheriffs who are out on the street 24/7 providing patrol services for you all in the City of Camarillo and in the unincorporated area. Those deputy sheriffs receive a briefing on potential storms and the impacts that they might have on our community. Our deputy sheriffs always have to respond for calls for service. That's their job. Normally, when there's no weather impacts in their free time, they're out looking for bad guys who might be causing harm and looking to take them to jail. But when we have a weather event like this, we shift our focus slightly so that in their free time, they're out looking for impacts from the weather that could be impacting your safety, and reporting on those impacts as quickly as possible back to our dispatch and back to our OES so that we can make decisions if those impacts are having, if they're causing negative issues for you all out there. Also, the Sheriff's Office has a tactical response team. It's a specially trained group of deputy sheriffs. There's 52 deputy sheriffs, part of the tactical response team. They're trained in handling natural disasters and doing evacuations during the natural disasters. And so during any one of these weather events, they'll be placed on alert. Some of those tactical response team deputies are actually working out in the field 24/7, so that if something should pop up and arise, they can respond immediately to it and begin evacuations. At the Camarillo Police Department, we also have our DART team, our Disaster Assistance Response Team. The DART team is specially trained in natural disasters as well, and they work alongside our deputy sheriffs during these natural disasters. And they're out in the field, serving as extra eyes and ears for us in events. Just like tonight, we have DART team members out in the field tonight, 2 teams that are out looking for things that might come up that might cause impact to us out in the city. And lastly, we have our citizen patrol members. These are also volunteers, and we staff them as extra eyes and ears during the events to be out in the field, to be looking for things that might cause problems for us and to report back to us so that in the event these rise to the level of a need for evacuation, we can get deputies out in the field as quickly as possible to make evacuation notices and to ensure you all are kept safe. So if you have any questions, I'll be here after the program and be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Commander Tennyson. I appreciate everyone sticking around. I know it's been a long night. It's been a lot of information. We are on the home stretch. Next, I'd like to invite up Kevin Kildee from Team Rubicon, who's going to give some important information on sandbagging.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the John F. Kennedy of tonight. They are all telling you what they can do for you. I'm about to tell you what you can do for yourself. So, Team Rubicon is a veteran-led disaster response group. We've been in existence since 2010 with the Haiti earthquake, and it was originally comprised mostly of veterans getting out of service and still wanting to serve their local communities. So what do? We basically, I'm also more of a Bob Barker type of guy, so what do? We basically just respond all over the U.S. helping clean up after disaster. We help do recovery efforts and rebuild efforts after disasters. But most importantly tonight, we want to make sure we go over mitigation with you all to prevent the disaster that you might find yourself engaged with. So we're going to go over the flood fight method or flood fight methods. We have a team trained by the California State Resource Board in sandbagging and temporary levees and a couple other methods that we think might be applicable to your individual circumstances. So in this class that we all take and get certified through the state, these are the things that we typically cover. What we're going to focus on tonight are basically some sandbag structures, structure protection, and temporary levees. All sandbags are not created equal. When I first took this class, I kind of scratched my head and said, what person doesn't know how to fill a sandbag? There's a lot of different methods of that you'll see sandbags in. Ideally, what you want to do is make sure your sandbags, if you get those white bags that you typically get at the fire station, you want to make sure they're only half full. If you are getting the burlap bags, you want to make sure they're about a third full. When you're moving these bags around, we like to consider sandbag operations as a neighborhood party type of thing. It's very physical. You've got to usually move them from where you fill them to where you're going to place them. So if we work as a team, neighbor helping neighbor type of thing, it makes things go a lot easier. If you're working in a team and you use a chain technique, what you see up here on the screen, That's basically, instead of you hauling a bag or two at a time, you line up your family and friends and you just pass them down the line, and it makes things go much more efficient. When you're laying your sandbags, and we have a demonstration outside, we have a little something set up right outside, you'll notice a lot of bags are pre-tied. You typically don't want your bags tied. One, like we said, we only want them half full. So you're gonna lay your bag on the ground. If you notice in this diagram, you're gonna get a wider footprint with a half full bag. So if you got a full bag, and we kind of call those Tootsie Rolls, it's got a circumference and it's gonna have less surface attachment. So if it's half full, it's gonna spread out and you're gonna get a greater coverage on the ground. When you're stacking the bags, you're gonna fold the bag, you're gonna lay the bag down, and you're gonna fold the upper triangle back on itself, away from the water, and then you'll lay the next bag on top of that triangle. What that does is basically interlock the bags, so as you start to get pressure working against the sandbag structure, they're going to start working in conjunction with each other. If they're individual bags and they're tied, they have a tendency of pushing and giving way if you get some heavy flows. So that's a typical structure, a burlap structure. If you notice, there's 3 rows up front, 2 rows in the back, and then 1 row on the end. This is called a half pyramid. One of the gentlemen up here was talking about it being building diversion walls. This is a basic diversion wall. If you're expecting the different types of floods, the debris floods or the debris flows that we're all talking about tonight, this is the best structure that you want to employ around your property. The next one we're going to look at is a temporary levee. They use these a lot up north. Over the weekend, I actually installed 2 of these down in the airport fire in Orange County. Basically, we lay out visqueen. Visqueen is just basically plastic sheeting, about 20 feet wide, 100 feet long. You put the sand or the material on the rear third of the visqueen, and then you fold the visqueen over the debris or over the material, and you sandbag the back. So basically, you just made yourself a big, large sandbag. So if you have larger property, if you've already got some of this debris or this sand building up in your area, you can actually use that debris and build walls to protect yourself for the rest of the winter. So our version is the burrito wrap. This is in Silverado Canyon last year in Orange County. We took the existing debris from the first storm, placed it in the visqueen, folded the visqueen over. The backside is sandbagged, and this has no correlation with the taco example that Jamie brought up with the Noah. It is Taco Tuesday though, right? So never mind. The last thing we're going to go over is structure protection. Not typically something that happens with debris flows, but the one thing I want you to remember is you have to think outside the box a little bit where your water historically comes from. So when that debris starts to flow, it's going to fill the existing channels, and look around your property and say, okay, where is that water going to go once that channel is filled? So think like a raindrop and figure out where it's going to go. If you think it's going to go towards your house, this is where you can start using protection. So in this picture, they basically have visqueen around the perimeter of the home. There is wood in front of any of the openings. Water comes with pressure. We want to make sure we have a piece of plywood or something in front of, the ventilation holes in your garage, or any openings such as a door, dog door, whatever. Lay out your plastic like an L away from the house, and then you can stack your sandbags up against that. If you have different types of material. Usually if it's wood, we don't want to be putting nails and things like that all over our home. What we use here is called a furring strip. So it's a 1x2. On that top level, we'll roll the plastic on the furring strip, and then we only have to put a couple nails into the house, so we're not really damaging the house anymore. And Patrick made me talk fast because we were a little over time, but the last thing I want to go over with y'all is just general thinking about preparedness. I've seen so many those big trash cans in culverts. So when the rain comes, you don't normally think that, oh, this is going to be an issue. But once those debris flows start flowing, they start picking up other debris along with it. And that's what's going to clog up the culvert. So it may not affect you when your trash can goes down the street, but when it clogs up a culvert, it's going to really screw up your neighbor and the neighbor down the street after that. And that's all I have. Back to Patrick.
Thank you, Kevin, for that presentation. One thing that Kevin didn't mention, but I want to make mention of is thanks to the help of Team Rubicon, starting today, tonight, on vcemergency.com, if you go to that website, click on the community tab and choose the mountain fire burn area, there's a button that you can click on to request help sandbagging. You can fill out that electronic form, and while we as public safety and public agencies can't come out and help you on private property, Team Rubicon can, and they will, and they're ready and willing. So fill out that electronic form. There's an option to upload some photos of what you need help with, and they will come out and assist you when they can. They'll reach out to you, figure out what they need to do, and they'll come help you however they can. We are providing a large supply of sandbags, and we continue to do that. We'll mobilize them in the community. Team Rubicon will take them that last mile and help you if you need assistance. So go to VC Emergency and look for that. Again, click on the community button, mountain fire burn area, and you'll see that there. All right, and just one last quick announcement before we go to question and answer. I have Sean Debley. He's the manager with the Ventura County Environmental Health Department, but more importantly, he's serving as the incident commander for the debris removal operations. He'd like to come up and just say a quick few words about what they have to offer. Sean.
Great, thank you, Patrick. I'll be brief. I just wanted to give an update tonight regarding the county lead debris removal program. I'm happy to announce that our environmental consultant started doing the assessments on Monday. And as of today, we have 103 applications for the right of entry permit. And there's a couple important dates that you need to be aware of. Next Monday, the 13th, is the deadline to submit for either the county lead program or for the private debris removal. And so we are also opening the Debris Removal Operations Center, also known as the DROC. That's going to be opening tomorrow. The hours are going to be 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and Saturdays 9 to 12. That's a venue that is located at the Camarillo Airport at the old fire prevention headquarters. There are flyers in the back with the address and directions on how to get there. If you have questions related to debris removal, whether it's for the private program or the county lead program, there's a team of experts there that can answer all the questions that you may have. And on that note, I will hand it back to Patrick.
All right, thank you, Sean. And that takes us to the end of our presentation. I promised a question and answer period. If we could get mic 2 turned on, that'd be great. Dave, I'll hand that over to you. Does anybody have any questions for any of our panelists tonight? If so, please feel free to come up to the microphones. We have them on both sides. We'll do our best to answer them, so don't be shy. Go ahead, sir. Oh, flip that switch on. I'm sorry. Looks like they're off. Natalie, it's on her way. Speak into the microphone, please. There you go.
30 years. And we had some issues out there with fire. And for you that are familiar with the arroyo that runs down adjacent to Redondo, I and other people, including a retired LA City fireman, We have a situation where the arroyo splits between the properties of these 5-acre parcels. Everyone wants the fire damage removed. There's no way to extract it except through the trail system. Now, thank God we have a new board now that's favorable to extracting the material. I talked to Jeff Grell about a walkthrough. The last thing you guys need is another catastrophe with another 2 or 3 homes taken to the ground. So what I did is, I've been working on this for about 5 years now. This is the 5th year. I've talked to Ventura County Fire. They referred me to Ventura County Fire Safe. I had their representative, along with the horticulture list, come out about 2.5 years ago, and he certified that everything is dead and it's toast, and we are susceptible to a catastrophic event like you had. We now have some new residents in there. We have a staging area. I have tractors, and we have a whole crew of people. We did this about 14 years ago under Linda Parks. She arranged everything. We extracted about 9 40-yard roll-offs of debris. And guess what? It's grown back. So what I did was, I'm hoping Jeff will keep his promise to walk through it with me. We need some guidance on how to address this and get this threat out of there. So I created a YouTube channel. It's 3 minutes and 20 seconds long. And you can download it. I can just look at it tonight. And what we have is burn piles all over that area. And if it touches off, we're going to have the same issue we have with the mountain fire. And for those, I feel for those folks that have lost their homes. But the last thing they need is another 300 homes to deal with, to split the resources that are available. So I would like my supervisor or a representative or two to come out and walk it with me. And we're willing to extract the material. What we're asking from Ventura County, like they provided either containers to put it in or a chipping, just a chipper truck that we can bring it down. We also have a new property owner down there who has about a ½ acre at the lower part we could use for a staging area. So anyway, just check the website out, the YouTube. It's called Santa Rosa Valley Fire Safety. It's only 3 minutes long. It will shock you. Now, I've been to the 2 previous meetings. The one on the 15th, I presented all the paperwork to Jackie Irwin, including the results of the fire assessment and the history of what's going on. So we need someone to direct us. We're willing. We've got people out there. We've got a new neighbor with a bobcat and a grapple. We'll extract it, and we just need Ventura County to work with us to get that threat out of there. Because I'd rather see the firemen playing ping pong in the firehouse than, dousing out what was left of my house. So if you could work with us, I'll leave my number. And I really wish my daughter was here tonight. She just got her PhD in related to climate change. She didn't want to come to this, but I think it was really informative. Anyway, thank you for your time and inviting me.
Sorry, lots to unpack in that, but thank you for your comments. We'll follow up with Supervisor Groh. It sounds like he has your contact information. There's a few agencies that what you mentioned touches, so we will get that information from Supervisor Groh and follow up with you. Next question, sir.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for such an informative set of presentations. Just absolutely wonderful, and we want to thank you for everything that you've done over the last couple of years. So I just wanted to make an observation. Where is everyone? This is actually kind of embarrassing, being a citizen, of this town and this area. Where is everyone? I mean, doesn't anyone take this seriously? I've been here for, I guess, about 10 years. I'm not, from here at all. I'm a complete foreigner. I've been here for 10 years. I take this very seriously. And after having to basically run for my life about a month ago, with all of this information and just direct observation of what was happening in my neighborhood, I was equally embarrassed to see how completely unprepared all of my neighbors were. No idea what to do, no idea what was going on. They're looking at like some website or something instead of looking out the window and seeing flames come over a ridge and coming and banging on my door, asking me what to do. And I mean, these are people that have grown up and lived in this area for 50, 60 years. I've only been here for 10 years. And, you know, feel free to disagree with me, but it just seems that there's this passiveness or resistance or reluctance to depend on your neighbors or reach out and ask and you know, make reasonable questions or decisions as to what you should do for yourself. And I'm just wondering, do you agree with this? Do you see this at all? Or is this just something that, you know, is in my mind?
Again, a lot to unpack there. What I'll say is this, I agree with you wholeheartedly. You know, we sent out nearly 6,000 direct mail invitations to residents within proximity to the burn area. We hope to provide this information to as many people as possible. And you hit the nail on the head, and hopefully people take this home with them tonight. Preparedness starts with you. There are a lot more residents in Ventura County than there are public safety responders. And we need your help. You have as much of a responsibility in this, if not more, than we do. We do everything we can, but there's a lot more of you than there are us. So I agree, and I think, you know, what I would encourage you to do is encourage your neighbors to visit our website and to take steps to prepare. It's a great conversation. I always close with reach out to your neighbors. Go and have those conversations with them and encourage them to do their part. We need their help. Their help is imperative to our success. So I couldn't agree more with you. I wish I had some better answers, but I agree.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maurice Kerr, 32 Cerro Crest, house burned down to the ground. On the positive side, I live on top of a hill. On the downside, I live on top of a hill. Half of my property is at a 45-degree angle that goes down to a barranca. And besides page 23 and 4 pictures and about 60 words, I'm not really given a lot of instruction on how to prevent my hill from ending up as a debris flow in one of my neighbor's yards. When I went to the disaster center and registered, I asked specifically that question and was handed this brochure. So I would like some help or some direction on what I should be doing. I feel a little bit like I've been left hanging out in the breeze. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and sorry to hear of your loss. First, anyone want to address that? Jim? Kevin?
There are some methods I can, if you get with me after this, they're called raincoat methods. It's a visqueen application. I don't know how big your hill is, but it's very good at sheeting, and we can actually help you install that if you need help with that.
That's great. So again, vcemergency.com, the community tab, you can request assistance from Team Rubicon. This presentation will also be posted online. Some of these references, if you didn't get them tonight, will be available there. I'll just make one comment to your concern. We're obviously limited in the advice that we can provide as public safety and some of our engineering staff, because we generate liability for the county by doing those things, or for the city. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you live on a property that you're unsure on how to best prepare and what engineering steps you should take to prevent further damage, you need to reach out to a professional, contract with a professional to provide you that advice. That's their job, and that's their expertise. They're better positioned to provide some of those answers to you. Sir?
Thank you. Good evening. To further the sentiment that gentleman just mentioned, my home also was destroyed in the mountain fire on Highland Drive. I believe my property on the end of our street, which is an unincorporated road and privately maintained by the homeowners, I would say that I think 3 of the 6 homes, or 4 of the 6 homes, were destroyed on that last stretch. So there are residents that are still there and actively living in those homes, and the roads are precariously situated now. There's a lot of erosion threat, and we do not have enough guidance in terms of what resources are available to us to prevent the worst from happening, which would be to destroy the destruction of the only ingress and egress that there is for that residential neighborhood. I don't know where the city stands in the sense that it's unincorporated and whether or not there are resources that have been set aside, perhaps FEMA funds that are available for us to tap into to prevent a more costly problem rather than having to deal with it with a more costly solution later on.
City, county, public works, want to address any of that?
Yeah, without knowing the specific location, I think you referenced it as being a road that was maintained by the homeowners that use it. I think from what Ventura County Public Works could do is to explain some of the repair techniques that we use for our roadway systems. They may or may not be applicable to your situation, but I think as Patrick mentioned about hiring a professional engineer who can sign and seal documents that might be needed to completely restore a roadway system to your specs would be an important step.
But as far as funding this initiative, we are SOL basically.
Yeah, so as of right now, and looking forward, there are no FEMA funding opportunities available for this. We go through a pretty lengthy process at the onset of one of these incidents to try to qualify. As devastating as this incident was, and I will tell you as your Director of Emergency Services, this frustrates me to no end. We did not qualify due to the level of damage. In essence, FEMA wants to see upwards of 1,000 homes destroyed before they come and provide that assistance. And in this case, we had 186 residential structures and 200 plus when we count outbuildings that were destroyed. So as much as we tried, both analytically, politically, to secure that service or assistance from FEMA, we were unsuccessful. And that's something we fight all the time. We had an incident last year in Port Hueneme where 50 homes were destroyed, and same thing, we fight this battle. There's reform needed in these programs, and it's something we advocate for constantly because, I hear what you're saying. I wish there was more that we could do. There just isn't. The other challenge, and something that we mentioned earlier, is that a lot of these roadways are not public roadways. So when they're not public roadways and they're privately owned, we don't have jurisdiction to go in and do work in those areas. And more importantly, when we do provide advice or we do take actions, we become liable for those things. So if we make those wrong decisions, we open up the county to certain liability. And as much as we're all here to help each other, the county gets sued for taking action, or the city gets sued for taking action if somebody disagrees with it, or ultimately is not the right choice. So really challenging situation. What I would encourage you to do if you want to talk further, the team will be here afterwards. Talk to them one-on-one. Perhaps somebody from the city or the county can come out and maybe just provide some basic advice and observations as Mr. Shaklaus referenced.
Thank you for your candid answer. This is basically what most of us are looking for, the ones who had actually suffered loss. We appreciate all the initiatives and we don't mean to be ungrateful, but we're here for information and solutions, not for kumbaya. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Hi there. There's a barranca that runs between Cerro Crest and Esteban Drive. There's a check dam about halfway up, and then there's a barranca that runs down basically to Locker Park. I talked to the county flood control about who's maintaining this, and they told me you are. It's private. And I'm trying to figure out who does what. I own 50 feet of a barranca that's 50 feet deep, of a barranca that's as wide as my property. There's a check dam at the end, and then this puppy just runs down 75 feet deep. I can't go in there and do anything. So who's going to take care of it?
I'll be happy to meet with you and we can talk through where we can cooperate and collaborate on making sure things work in that area.
Deal. Thank you.
By the way, that was Mr. Jeff Palmer from the Watershed Protection Team, Public Works. Sir?
Yeah, I think I can direct this to Jim, Team Rubicon. Jim, we also have properties on the ridge. There's 6 of our homes that were destroyed, and we have the same similar concerns with the 45-degree pitch of the hillside below that can affect other properties and the road below. And that hasn't been specifically addressed, so we need help on maybe surveying that and tell us what measures are needed for that, but especially what materials are available, and assuming that we might have the storm of the century 2 weeks from now. Can we get on this right away tomorrow, maybe get it looked at and get the source of materials and get those ordered?
So ideally, like Patrick said, if you guys can sign up on that list, what we typically do is we'll go out and do a reconnaissance of the area. So we would tie all the homeowners together and visit and come up with a common plan that would support a mutual solution.
Okay, so we'll set an appointment, we can meet you out there.
Yeah, we'll just piggyback off of each other.
Considering we've got the big fire down south now, how's it look for materials and having these, maybe the 10-foot water barriers, straw barriers, biodegradable materials? Because this is going to be quite a mountainside to cover and build tiers. Is the material available in such short order?
So we have quite a bit of stuff. Sandbags, not a problem. We've got more sandbags than we know what to do with, and thanks to the inmates at the Todd Road Jail, we can build as many as we need. We have a large machine that builds those for us. So sandbags aren't an issue. Any of the other tools, we have a small supply that we receive from the California Conservation Corps, and we'll make those available to Team Rubicon to deploy. Anything beyond that, if it's not public property, and it's not something that Team Rubicon can assist with as a volunteer organization helping you, again, it's private property. So we cannot use public funds to do work on private property. That's just the law. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it's set up. So again, fill out that request form, get Team Rubicon out there, see how they can help you. That's your first step. And I know it's not a thing that we all want to hear, but really if it's private property and you need advice, you need ongoing advice, you need to solicit the help of an engineering firm with folks that are available to work directly with you as your consultant to provide that advice on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I think we're just looking for the proper way to do that, the best way to make that barrier, and then we can source the labor and materials as soon as possible.
Understood. Yeah, so fill out that form. It's a good start. Thank you for your question.
Hi, I'm Leo Paulo. I was on Santa Cruz Way. We lost probably at least a couple of properties there because the water failed. In the emergency planning world, what's the process for making sure that the fire hydrants have water when they open them up?
Chief Parker, do you want to address that? Fire prevention side? Yes, the mic.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and thank you for asking it. But essentially, each water district within Camarillo or anywhere else is governed by the state, not by the fire department. So fire department does not have the authority to create policy for water districts. What we can count on is whatever comes out of that fire hydrant, that's for sure. But like I mentioned before, you have to have a plan. So the plan is we bring the water to the fire. We bring the fire engines that hold up to 500 to 700 gallons. We also bring in water tenders. Depending on the firefight, we don't always hook up to a fire hydrant. That's not always the strategy that we pick. When it's a fast-moving fire, we're trying to get people out, number one. Number two, if we do put hose on the ground, we're bumping and running. We're going from home to home, circling back to home. So we don't always hook up to a fire hydrant per se. Should they work? Absolutely. Do we count on it? We can't always count on it. So I don't know if that fully answers your question.
I think you answered my question. In other words, I need to go talk to my water district. They had a truck up near my house, and they did a great job. Because part of the house caught on fire and they put it out, but then there was no water, and I had no water in the fire hydrants, and later the water district said that their main pump failed and the second one couldn't get power. I mean, backup generators, I know, especially with all the CARB requirements, maybe aren't as popular for small water districts as they could be, but at any rate, your guys were there, and they went to get more water, and then the house flared up, and I couldn't put it out myself. So I think you basically answered your question, but I would offer that it might be in the interest of somebody in the county to see, at least poll, what the different water districts do as far as readiness for because there's water available and the hydrants were there, but the boost pumps failed. And I know we lost a couple of properties because of that.
I'm sorry for your loss, and it is unfortunate, and I'm sorry that happened.
Thank you.
Sir, one thing I'll just share with you too, you know, there's 166 water districts in Ventura County. Some of those serve thousands of customers, some serve 10 customers, all different sizes. I can tell you that there are some state elected officials that are looking at introducing a bill potentially in the future along those lines. And did you want to comment on that?
Yes.
Your timing is perfect.
Yes, my name is Michelle Sevilla. I'm with the office of Assemblymember Steve Bennett. For those of you who were in the town hall here a few weeks ago, last month, he had also spoken to this very effect. Since then, we've actually had very good conversations. He's been calling, you know, the county's executive office, all the way to fire departments, all the way to water districts, numbers of them, in order to help inform legislation that is exactly answering your question, that will hopefully get more water districts with enough resources to get prepared and be more resilient. We are finding that there have been, you know, we have spoken to water districts, including Pleasant Valley, Crestview, and all of the ways they've been prepared for something like this, and the lessons learned from from this incident. And so he does have legislation coming out. We don't have yet. He does have legislation coming out for those of you who are interested, who are residents, as well as the unincorporated areas of Camarillo. He actually has a town hall, community city coffee Saturday at 10 o'clock, where he could talk to you more directly about this, as well as continuing to engage with stakeholders.
Great, thank you for that. And again, this is something that Assemblymember Bennett's actually reached out to me about. I know to the fire department, just several of us. We're excited to see this bill. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of water resiliency, so it's in the works. Michelle, thanks for your comments and briefing us on that. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Melinda DeWheel. I'm a landscape designer here in town, and I am probably a little bit premature for this conversation. First of all, let me just, my condolences to all of you that have had a loss. I live in Camarillo Heights, and the fire just barely skirted me. I watched it go by, and it was terrifying. I did some of the recovery work in the Thomas fire, and specifically when people were rebuilding, there was a component within the permit process of completing the front yard landscape design. And it was an exercise in confusion for most people. They just, you know, it was no information was really presented to anyone, including the architects, what they had to do to comply. And I'd like to allow this to be a smoother process this time around when people are rebuilding a year from now and trying to get their permits. And I'm wondering if any of you have any direction for me to be able to obtain the information that I need, not only just to do code compliance, but attending this meeting has kind of inspired me to include that in part of my everyday evaluation, include fire safety as part of my service.
Most definitely, and the man that I was hoping was going to stand up actually is standing up and walking down here. I can see him up there in the top. That's our fire marshal from the Ventura County Fire Department, Joe Morelli. And we'll wait a second for Joe to make his way back here. I can tell you the fire department is doing some excellent work to address some of what you just brought up. So we'll wait for Joe to make his way back here. He wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I'm glad he's here to address this. So here he comes.
Good evening. We have a community wildfire preparedness division. I'd be glad to talk with you more afterwards. We're always looking for how we can improve our processes. We have, because of the Thomas Fire and the Woolsey Fire, we have a policy for rebuilding that we've been reevaluating, looking at ways that we can make the process easier for the community. Unfortunately, we have experience, but it will go smoother this time. So I'm glad to answer any other questions. Otherwise, I'll stay afterwards and glad to talk with you. And if you just follow us on our website, we'll be putting all the updates there as well as on the recovery page. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe, for your impromptu jumping up. You know, one of the things, just to brag on them a little bit, that I appreciate that the fire prevention side does from County Fire is they go out and look at the structures that burned following these fires, and they look really closely to determine how we can change codes or just change local policy on building and prevention. So they do a lot of work before these incidents and also after incidents to really try to figure out how we can prevent these things in the future. Also, Ventura County Fire Safe Council, they do some excellent work. We don't have a representative from their organization here tonight, but they'll come out and evaluate your property and help provide you information on how to harden your structures. So how to prevent fire from getting into your attic through vents, all kinds of different stuff. They do that free of charge. So you go to Google, just Google Ventura County Fire Safe Council, a ton of information on their website, and they will come out and provide some guidance free of charge. Anyone else have any questions? I don't see anyone at the microphones. Oh.
First of all, I'm a resident of Camarillo Heights for 72 years. The young gentleman that came up and said, "Where is everybody?" That's a very good question. I think in the 72 years that I've lived here, I have never experienced what we experienced a month ago. Never. So maybe we were rocked into some kind of complacency that we were safe. I did not hear my issue addressed this evening, but I'd like to make a few comments. First of all, I want to thank the fire department. When I returned home after being evacuated for 4 days, there were 8 firemen on my property. They were from everywhere, and I thank them. They were so kind. "Lady, do you need a snack? Do you need water?" I said, "You know what I really need? I need the power turned back on. I haven't had a shower for 4 days. I haven't been able to sleep. Every hour, the helicopters go by, and I say, thank you, God, for the helicopters. It's 3 in the morning, and I'm thanking God. And then I wonder, why are they going by? And I can't sleep. So after all these days of not having any power to my home in various stages, I fell in bed at, I think the power came on that night at 8 o'clock, because when I woke up, the clocks were, flashing and doing their thing. During the billing cycle from Southern California Edison Company, there was Thanksgiving, and I had spent that 2 days at my daughter's home. And then the 4 days when the power was turned off during the evacuation notices, I thought, well, at least my power bill will probably be only about $90. And when it came, it was $680. I thought, something's wrong here. So I called them and said, there were all these days when my power was out, and there were 2 days I know I wasn't even on the premises. And the young lady said, well, lady, it's been cold. You probably had the heat on. And I said, I haven't had a bill over $250 for the 70 years I've lived on this property. So 680 seems to me to be a little bit out of whack. So she said, well, we can get you some assistance to pay the bill. I said, that's really not why I'm calling you. I need the bill corrected. So I said, I think there's something very wrong here. So finally I said, can I speak with your supervisor? A gentleman came on and I went through the whole thing again, and he said, well, we'll have to put your bill into something that's called abeyance, and it'll take about 60 days. He said, I noticed that we've given you a new smart meter. I said, well, I'd like to request another meter because the smart meter is not smarting enough. He said, you don't have the authority to do that. I said, let's get somebody on the phone that has the authority. So again, another gentleman, and so the second gentleman said, don't pay the bill. We'll put it into this Never Never Land and we'll get back to you. So I hung up and I thought, there's got to be somebody to help me. So I called Gray Law and they said, no, you should contact your local representative. So I found out that Jeff Burrell is my local representative. I called that office and the young lady was there and immediately was helpful. And I explained what happened. She says, we will help you. Now, this all happened on Christmas Eve. So I've given them a little time, but I'm going to work on it this week. I don't know if anybody else has had problems with Southern California Edison Company. I see hands. All right. So I decided I would send them a check for $250, and I wrote on it in good faith because I was fearful that if I didn't pay them something, they might shut me off completely. I have come to the conclusion that in order for us to be proactive, and as all these people have told us, we're responsible to take care of ourselves. For you who work in legislature, for you in the county public works, if you could come up with some type of situation where we could get generators so that we are not dependent on the Almighty for our power, that would be huge. I can't think of a better public works project that there is in the world than to provide the homeowners with an alternative energy source. I know people in the Midwest, they all have generators. They look at me like I'm a nutcase. Oh, everybody has one. Well, in Southern California, everybody doesn't have one. So I'm here tonight to alert you, maybe this is something you should be looking into, especially you folks who have lost your homes. You're having an opportunity to build a new home. You might consider your own energy source. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for sharing your story. I don't see any other questions, so I will share with you. Our team will be here after the meeting, so if you have something that you want to ask us, feel free to approach. Thanks to all of our panelists. We appreciate your time, and more importantly, thank you all for taking the time to come out here tonight and hear from us. I'll just close with this little reminder.
I just wanted to further one more thing about the Southern California Edison thing. She's not the only one who's had disputes with Edison. I encourage everybody to look at your bill and call Edison. What I found out after having my house destroyed, and they were still billing me, I got a bill for $116 for energy I did not consume. That they estimate what your energy usage will be. And they do not always refer to meters, and especially not the destroyed ones, so they billed me anyway. Please call Edison and check what they're doing. They also do end-of-year tallies for whatever benefits you did not cash in on that were available to you over the year, and then they charge you for that at the end of the year as well. So our representatives should be aware that this is happening as well. It's dishonest, it's unfair, and it's an abuse of power on their part.
Okay, so just again, a closing slide here I want to share with you all. The importance of staying informed. You've heard vcemergency.com a lot. That's a great starting point. Make a plan. It's up to you to take steps to prepare. So make that plan. Part of that plan is building a kit. And then lastly, get involved. The gentleman that asked the question at the beginning, why aren't there more people here? That's a great question. Everyone in this room, everyone at home has a responsibility to plan and prepare. And we need people to get involved. We need people to do their part. So I challenge you to reach out to your neighbors, your family, friends, and encourage them to take steps to prepare. With that, everyone stay safe. Again, we'll be around for a while to answer any questions. Appreciate your time, and have a good rest of your night. Thank you.